Okay, it's now 4 o'clock and we will begin the Port of Bellingham Board of Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. We will now close the executive session and open the public meeting. Commissioner Briscoe.
Here.
Commissioner Shepard.
Here.
And Commissioner Bell is here. With the opening of the meeting, we usually do public comment period. Our public comment period will last about 15 minutes. We ask everybody to limit their comments to 3 minutes. We will let you know when that 3 minutes is up. If anybody wishes to speak, we'd like to have you either raise your hand on the Zoom call. Since I'm the only one in the room, I'm assuming there's nobody here that's going to speak. So if you're wishing to speak, just give me a hand raise on the Zoom call and we will call you out and let it be known.
David Christensen.
David Christensen, wishing to speak?
Yes. Want to go ahead and talk?
You may.
First of all, Bill, I may go slightly over 3 minutes, so if that's all right with you, I could just continue to talk. It'll just be a little bit more than 3 minutes, if that's all right.
Yeah, and if you're on this Zoom meeting, if you would mute your microphone so we could eliminate the background noise, that would be helpful.
Oh.
And not you, Mr. Christensen, but.
Okay, everyone else.
Yeah, so you're up.
Okay, thank you. Well, for those who don't know me, my name is David Christensen. I'm an architect and planner for over 40 years here in Bellingham with an office in Fairhaven with over 47 design awards, including Port Waterfront planning work. And I'm a longtime member of the Fairhaven Historic Preservation Commission. I've worked with many developers over the years to try and make a project happen in the so-called lot pit at Mill and 11th Street in Fairhaven. None have ever made any economic sense. But I just want to talk briefly about a little history here. Going back several years, Dominion Sustainable Development started discussions with Port staff about an innovative development concept that finally did make economic sense. Negotiations were in earnest a couple of years ago, and an agreement was made with the Port, including consolidation of property on C Street and Whatcom Creek, to proceed rezoning the FMIC property to be acquired and the adjacent unused 10th Street right-of-way in a trade with the city. This was going to be a quality project, and I really wanted to be involved. The land involved topographic issues, angular property ownership, zoning lines, trails, sewer easements, street vacations, and property trades. It was not an easy deal. We had 2 neighborhood meetings already about the rezone areas, including the property. All city staff was pretty excited to partner with us to meet their stated goals, which were a permanent location of the South Bay Trail, public parking, affordable housing opportunities, and design provisions for usable open space and connectivity to the South Bay Trail. Originally, the ground floor would have just be private parking or storage, access from the top level only. However, Rob Fix and I discussed the idea of the ground floor remaining in Port control. This was a great idea because in the 2 neighborhood meetings we had about the rezone, there was concern about losing any industrial land, even though it was mostly unusable on the steep hillside. This solved that issue. The ground floor could become marine-related use like storage or fabrication as a condominium shell controlled by the Port for use and access on otherwise unusable land. We agreed it seemed like an easy win-win. Ground floor of the Port parcel could remain industrial zoning as it exists today. The upper floors would be rezoned to Fairhaven Urban Village Commercial Core. City said we could do this. This allowed Port to be in control as was requested. I was also asked to review the purchase sale agreement for anything that may affect the actual ability to build a structure on this Port parcel. I had a few practical buildability issues that needed to be clarified. Rob Fix generally agreed. It was just the normal course of business negotiation. The issues were no different than what was negotiated and approved with Shannon Properties for the South Bay Suites building. Nothing unusual. For example, underground footings, drainage, temporary construction laydown area, and architectural appurtenances required by the Fairhaven design guidelines. No net loss of Port land use. Not a big deal. Terry Elahi then asked us to provide a reasonable sale price of the ground shell building area now, within a few days. It is impossible to predict costs now, let alone in 2 to 3 years, and it was a pretty unfair request, but we did our best to comply. Most of all these changes to the original purchase were requests by staff. After all this, port staff said a majority of the commissioners voted against proceeding with the sale. We in the city of Bellingham were pretty stunned. We met all the requirements requested by staff, and there had been general agreement for the entire project. After all this time and expense by Dominion and port staff requests, we were given no reason why. At this point, we are proceeding with the overall project without any port property. We will still be trading the 10th Street right-of-way with the city for open space around the South Bay Trail and more public parking. You know, the port's core values include promoting sustainable economic development and a pledge to work cooperatively with other entities. So let us work together cooperatively to achieve a win for everyone here. As an architect and planner in this community, I think this is a rare opportunity for government to have leadership opportunity to meet positive long-term goals for the port, the city, the community, and the property owner, of course. We truly do not understand any downside. Now we are only asking for the port to work cooperatively with us, allow the same conditions provided to Shannon Properties, including underground footings, drainage, temporary construction laydown area, and architectural appurtenances, as they're called. Again, no effect for Port FMIC land use. The city of Bellingham is in favor of all this and is working cooperatively with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Do you have your laptop on?
Anyone else?
Ken, I think you're going to have to mute your, there you go.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Would you please just raise your hand? All right, seeing that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Any comments from anybody? Any wishes for the consent agenda? Any discussions to be had with the commission? Commissioner Shepard? Since you're on my screen.
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Oh, looks ship-shape to me.
And same for me. So Carrie?
Yeah. Motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yes.
Commissioner Bell is also an aye, a yes. All right, now we'll move on to our presentations. Adrian Hegedus has got a port climate action strategy update for us. Adrian?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioners. This is Brian Gowan, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. I was going to introduce this a bit, and then I'll hand it over to Adrian to take the lion's share of this. As we all know, she's the lead on this project. I just had a couple introductory statements to make. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's see here. It's been a while since we've been back on Zoom now. So let me see what we got here.
So this PowerPoint is what you consider a few comments.
Yeah, no, I just got a couple introductory slides, and then I'll pass it over to Adrian. Yeah, yeah. So is everybody can see that okay? The PowerPoint with it says the purple PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
What's the heading? What's the heading on it, Brian? I want to make sure I got the right one up here.
Port of Bellingham Climate Action Strategy Update.
Very good. I'm in the right section.
Okay, and I'll.
I can't see your screen.
Okay, and that's convenient because actually when Adrian takes over, since I'm sharing my screen, she'll tell me to advance the slide, and I'll let you know kind of which slide we're on as we advance. So just going on to the next slide, the Climate Action Strategy Update with a few bullet points, just to talk a little bit about what we're going to go over today. Just a little bit of background on the the port policy, kind of why we would be pursuing a strategy like this, to review some of the ongoing work that we've got underway, a little bit of context of the regulatory environment that we operate in as a public agency, but also having other agencies that have roles and regulations that could impact us as well, and then talk a little bit about the overall strategy and the next steps. So this was the key one that the reason I wanted to introduce this was a little bit was, just to kind of step back from the higher level and say, why is it helpful for the port staff and for the port to establish a climate action strategy? Well, first and foremost, having a direction from the commission, and you'll see as Adrian talks through this, kind of how the process will go, but having direction from the commission, since this is a long range planning issue, it really helps guide internal port discussions at the staff level, helps with our annual budgeting process, helps set priorities, and really can help drive a cross-divisional discussions about environmental and planning can be over here talking about it in one way. We want to make sure that having a port adopted policy really helps us have a consistent discussion between divisions as we set priorities and goals. It also helps us as an organization align with community goals and other partner agencies, and seeing where we have opportunities to partner with Whatcom County and the city and other groups on the same issues. Just having a general strategy helps us look for opportunities for cost savings, as simple as that. When you're looking at things like efficiencies and energy efficiency savings, having a process that sets this as a priority helps us to look for those opportunities. On a similar level, not just for efficiency types of grants, but we're seeing it more and more, having questions come in from different types of federal grants and state grants, asking the question, do you as an agency have a plan or a strategy in place related to climate change? And that kind of helps us check this box for grant eligibility questions when we're looking at bigger funding mechanisms for large infrastructure projects. Also, we're starting to get questions from insurance agencies and other kind of external risk considerations, that saying, hey, do you have a plan? Do you have a resiliency plan in place? And so be able to have a strategy that says, yes, we are, and here's how we're doing it. And that leads to the next point, which really, we have a long-term goal of building a resiliency into our port. We have critical infrastructure for transportation. The airport has certain considerations the FAA requires. We as a port should be looking at our resiliency across the board. How do we have opportunities to provide disaster relief if there's an earthquake through our shipping terminal or through the airport? What if there's a tsunami from an earthquake? What are our other opportunities? So looking port-wide resiliency planning, the climate strategy fits right into that. It also helps us, as I mentioned earlier, prepare for our role as a stakeholder in these other agency decisions and other regulatory mechanisms that are coming into place. And it allows for us to have updates to the commission and have a public document that allows for stakeholder involvement into our strategy. So there's lots of reasons that from the staff level, we want to continue to have this conversation with the commission. And as you'll see, we have a recommendation to move forward with the eventual adoption of a strategy by the commission. And then this is the last slide that I have, and I'll pass it over to Adrian. This is just to highlight that this is consistent with what we've been putting into our budget recently for our strategic goals. The 2021 strategic budget in our environmental division had that we were going to continue to development a climate action strategy, including visions, greenhouse gas inventory, and establishing mitigation goals. And then the planning and development objective also builds in a port-wide resiliency initiative that includes climate adaptation and a vulnerability assessment. So this is just work that we're continuing to do as staff, and we wanted to brief the commission on that. So with that, Adrian, I'll pass it over to you, and you can just tell me when to advance the slides.
Sure. Thanks, Brian. It's a bit loud here. I hope everybody can hear me okay. My name is Adrian Hedgedis. I am an environmental specialist with the Port of Bellingham for just over 4 years. Very exciting. I am going to go ahead and ask you to go to the next slide, please, Brian. Okay. So what we've brought to you before as a result of the roadmap that we had done a couple of years ago was more of a table showing different things and how we move through each section and who is involved in those. And I'm not going to bring that up again today, but this is wanted to bring this up as a different way to look at it because this is really an iterative process. So up at the top left there with the greenhouse gas inventory and the vulnerability assessment section of the climate action strategy, we have completed the greenhouse gas inventory and we are waiting for a report now on the vulnerability assessment. So Kurt Baumgarten here at the port is kind of leading that charge. And we'll have a separate update for you on that. But that's sort of the data collection that we've done initially or are doing initially. And that will help us set goals and policy moving forward. Those in turn will help us develop a mitigation and adaptation plans moving forward. Then we implement them, we monitor the implementation, and we go back to more data collection. So we will be going around this a couple of times, and that is sort of standard with this type of work. All of this, of course, then is driven by vision and policy. And I want to recognize that we did have a really good workshop with directors not that long ago to talk through what some of the visions might look like. And so we'll be bringing those to you at hopefully some point as well to have that discussion and a recommendation on those going forward. Okay. So this is really exciting to finally bring this to you all. It is something that's going to affect all or most of our staff in some way. This supports the port's mission. It does build on information previously developed for the port and will reflect the knowledge of our staff and other stakeholders with climate change and sustainability. We want to reflect the best available data and science relevant to us. This will provide clear, transparent project information to increase stakeholder awareness of and preparation for the climate change impacts that are coming our way. And it just really helps us to formalize the work that is already underway by the port. It helps us establish our goals with that and to evaluate our progress moving forward. I want to encourage you as well, if I'm going to go through some stuff here, and I am happy to take any questions that you may have as I go. And I will leave space throughout as well for questions. So can you go ahead to the next slide, please, Brian? Thank you. Okay, ongoing port efforts. This is the exciting part. So again, we have a lot of great stuff going on by so many divisions in the port, so many great people and consultants on board with all of this work. And again, this climate action strategy will help formalize some of that and help drive further work going forward. So examples that we've had so far from the photo on your screen here, we had the largest public installation for solar in Whatcom County at the cruise terminal, completed in June of this year by Ecotech. That's providing 100 kilowatts of power to the grid. And so far, so good. You can actually check out a link on our website to the dashboard that shows you the real-time production of that solar array. And I'm happy to put that in the chat after this if anybody would like to see that. And we will be highlighting that on our website. Right now it's a little bit buried, but we are hoping to bring it to the front in the next little while. Also, if you look at things like our lighting projects that have been going on for years, I'm just going to list a few off here and I'll tell you the number of dollars that we're saving with those particular projects. So we had the Fairhaven Marine Industrial Park projects. We had most of the warehouses done in 2016 and 17. We had the shipping terminal, terminal warehouses and yard in 2017 and 2019, the cruise terminal parking lot in 2020, and some Squalicum Harbor lighting in 2020. Those to date, the savings from those projects alone is $250,000. We are also constantly looking at energy efficiency opportunities throughout the port, whether that's port operated and controlled buildings or for our tenants. And I get to see those as I go through with the ECAP program, but we do a lot of weatherization, window improvements, HVAC replacements. We just finished a large project at the Bayview building with our energy services company, working through the Department of Enterprise Services for that. So those energy efficiency projects are ongoing. We now have several electric vehicle charging stations throughout the port, and we're currently looking at more. Those will be going in more public access areas as well as for port staff. We have committed to the Green Direct Power Purchase Program through PSE. So that resulted in significant greenhouse gas reductions for our electricity purchases, and I'll go into that in a little more detail later. But that is an 18-year commitment, and because it is for wind and solar rather than the traditional PSE power mix, that really helps us with our greenhouse gas and clean energy. We currently have our vulnerability assessment underway, looking at critical infrastructure and assets around the port, and many other projects. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the first of a couple that are going to show you our greenhouse gas emission inventory that we had done with 2019 data. So if you look at other greenhouse gas inventories, people use a baseline year. And this is what we've chosen, at least for now, to use as our baseline year because it was the easiest one for us to get data for. So 2019, our total emissions for those greenhouse gas producing activities within control of the port was about 5,687 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So that number in the bottom right corner is in units that are the standard presentation of greenhouse gases. So that may be other greenhouse gases besides carbon dioxide, but everything's converted to carbon dioxide for the purposes of presentation. So most of that, as you can see, is electricity from both PSE and BPA. So BPA provides electricity for tenants and port operations in Blaine and in Sumas. So everything basically outside of Bellingham city limits. So it's the large portion of this. We also looked at fleet fuel usage. So that's trucks and cars being used for port business and our own fleets on our purchasing cards. Refrigerants being used throughout the port, employee commuting data. So looking at how many people are driving back and forth to work, and also looking at natural gas use in port controlled buildings. And then the next slide, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, shows us what this looks like with the PSE electricity taken out. So by committing to the Green Direct program through PSE, that effectively takes the greenhouse gas emissions from the power produced or purchased from PSE down to zero. So that brings our footprint down to 798 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent for that period of time for 2019. So pretty significant drop. That's about 86%. So because the PSE electricity effectively takes that down to zero, we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions. That's for the next 18 years while we've committed to the Green Direct program. After that, we'll have to see what happens. As you can see, the rest of the numbers are still the same as they were in the previous pie chart. It's just that their proportions changed. Next slide, please. Oh, I did want to say too, this measurement, so for both of these, we really looked at port controlled data. So we're not considering those, for example, those electricity meters that are controlled by tenants. So this is keeping this within port controlled purchases. So this shows those two graphs side by side to show the numbers with and without Green Direct. So as you can see, 5,687 down to 798. Are there any questions specifically about the inventory before I move on?
Can it be said, Adrian, that this is the typical profile for most business parks, business users, business complexes, industrial areas? If the entire world went to this Green Direct type program, they would see similar results. Is that a safe statement?
I think if you look at the EPA's report on nationwide production, for example, transportation plays a bigger part. Like it's about equal to electricity purchases across the country. So yeah, our fuel usage is smaller at this point than say the national average. And I could I couldn't tell you exactly off the top of my head what it might look like at the Port of Seattle, for example. But they have very different business than we do. So does that answer your
Adrian,
question?
I need a
Commissioner?
clarification here if I can.
Mhm.
Between the two graphs, we've got the big orange area that's PSE and BPA. So that is the stuff they're using. I take they're using natural gas and some other type of fuel to make that electricity is why that's like it is.
Yes, and it's also due to the amount that we purchase from them. So their power mix does include some coal, or did include some coal, as well as natural gas production. You're correct.
So all of that orange is power we're getting from PSE and BPA, and all that power is being made with coal or natural gas.
No,
None of
there's
that
some
is, hydroelectric or anything.
there is some hydroelectric in that mix as well.
So with the hydroelectric, we're not creating gases with the hydroelectric, greenhouse gas. Why would that be in the mix?
Sorry, why would hydroelectric be in the mix? There is a
Yeah.
small amount attributed to hydroelectric as well, but it's very small compared to coal, for example.
Right, but it's included in that graph as well.
Yes, all the power is. They don't differentiate. There's just one number that comes in associated with the number of kilowatt hours that you purchase.
Yeah, okay. I was just curious how much was hydroelectric, and if they take back that out when they give those numbers, or they just leave it in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as far as I understand, Commissioner, it is mixed in. I can look for you if you'd like on some background for that, though.
Yeah, maybe if sometime if you in all your spare time, I know you've got, Adrian, if you could tell me how much of that is hydroelectric, because we're adding tonnage, we're adding numbers up here, and I'd be curious to see how much tonnage would be taken away if the hydroelectric was backed out of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Nope. Okay. Next slide, please. All right. So how do we reduce our greenhouse gas footprint? The mitigation opportunities are vast, and we are looking at a lot of these. Some of them are short-term, some of them are long-term. Some of them may not hit that particular graph because it might be a little out of scope, or we haven't included it yet in that particular calculation, but things change as we go forward. So we could be looking at natural gas reduction in our buildings. We're keeping an eye on what happens with the city of Bellingham with their requirements for potential changes to new construction requiring electrification of buildings. So we are keeping an eye on that. We want to be supporting our staff on alternatives to single occupancy internal combustion engine commutes. It's pretty tough in Bellingham. There's not a lot of bus routes that serve port facilities, but we're working on that. Looking at electrification of our fleets, as well as adding more electric vehicle charging stations throughout the port. Looking at shore power and marine vessel charging, this is pretty fascinating to look at what's happening, for example, with the Washington State ferries. They're in the middle of hybridizing 3 of their jumbo Mark II class ferries, and that will reduce their footprint, or their diesel use by about a quarter, 25% for 3 vessels. So pretty fascinating stuff. Looking at more electrification for shore power and making sure that we are developing infrastructure that's appropriate to support that over the long term. Looking at, say, electrification of equipment used at port facilities as well, whether it's landscaping equipment, whether we can find something that works for our crews to charge their machines when they're out on site or not. looking at airport opportunities, opportunities more at warehouses as well. Reducing the refrigerant use on port properties. I have a feeling from that graph before that our refrigerant data that we have is actually a little bit smaller than what we have reported in our inventory. It's just a question of finding the data. And this is where having this strategy in place is going to be valuable, because I think it'll be easier on everybody when I'm not just asking them random questions. If we can get some consistent ways to ask folks for data that doesn't add more to their work schedules, I think that'll help us. Looking as well, so I'm getting all these updates on my computer. Looking at electricity reduction in Blaine, as well as trying to help out and support our non-PSE tenants, as well as our other tenants that are PSE customers as well. See if there's anything we can do to support that. So we'll continue to explore those opportunities. We're also looking at different ways to sequester carbon. So the bottom right of this, the photo here on this slide is eelgrass. And those eelgrass beds actually sequester quite a lot of carbon. So if there might be projects that we are setting up or tenants are setting up, if there's some arrangements we can make to help support those projects, that might be a way for us to reduce our footprint by buying or creating sequestration offset opportunities. I did want to also point out, with now that I'm looking at the pictures, the Ford F-150, there is a Lightning coming out next year, which is fully electrified. So we're looking at purchasing 3 of those. We put our name on the list. So because they were on our asset list to update anyways. Very exciting. Are there any questions on that so far? I'm giving you a lot of
Adrian, you mentioned ferries, and I know we've discussed previously electrification, shore power for the shipping terminal as something kind of to come in the future as demand increases and we have more rationale for it. I doubt that the Alaska Marine Ferry is a good candidate for electrification because of their long haul nature of that vessel. But do we know if we have shore power? Are they able to utilize shore power while they are docked to reduce the need for them to run their diesel engines?
That would be a good question for Dave Warder. I don't believe so. If Dave is on here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Dave Warder, Marine Terminals Manager. There is a charging port. There is power hookups available for the Alaska Ferry. And to my knowledge, they have not ever utilized that. So I know we've looked at that when we started looking at the shipping terminal and charging or electrification of the shipping terminal for marine cargo vessels as that begins to evolve. But the ferry does have an opportunity to hook up to power when they are at berth 1.
Okay, great.
Is there enough to run the whole ship, Dave?
That's probably the question that needs to be answered because that's probably why they have not utilized it. But we can definitely dig into that further. My guess is similar.
I'd like to see our terminals, both our marine terminal and our ferry terminal, turned into generator areas when you're there for any amount of time. And I guess that would bring, I had a question too. Michael got some of the asked there, but is there any kind of grant program for no idle marine terminals? Is there any kind of federal grant program that could help us with the process of putting in these big hookups for these ships because they're massive?
I don't know of any at this point, but we will definitely keep our eye out for that.
Kind of on that note, can you give us a rundown, and maybe not today, but at some point, what kind of improvements are going to be needed on those docks to support that change in power? because it's not going to be insignificant, right?
Yes, we will bring that to you.
Commissioner, we actually have this in your budget. We can review it when we go through the 2022 budget, but it's currently in the 5-year plan and funded for the shipping terminal. So that information is out there, and we can certainly discuss it. I think the best time to do that is probably during the budget process.
Yeah, I just plead ignorance on exactly what structural changes need to be made in order to accommodate that. So I'd kind of like to see and hear that in words. What types of improvements are we going to make? And maybe that's the time to do it, is during our budget retreat.
It's big numbers to do it at the shipping terminal. You're talking at least $3 million, if not more. Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's over $3 million.
Correct, Rob. It is currently out in the 2022 budget for just shy of $2 million. That number, though, is probably about 5 years old. We probably want to put eyes on it again. But that number was also based on 1,200 amps, going back to Commissioner Briscoe's comment, 1,200 amp service out on the piers. So my guess is the Alaska Ferry probably is in that similar ballpark. And I believe the service that's currently in place is 600 amps. So to answer that question, yeah, it would definitely be in the few $1 million range probably to do those kind of upgrades at the ferry terminal, but that is unfounded. That's just me going based off of our previous information.
So Dave, is most of that wires, running power? Is there any physical structural changes that need to be made, or additions that need to be made to those piers? Or to that?
My guess is yes. Most of it's wires, but there's also transformers, because right now that power is not, as I understand it, and the engineers could jump in as well, is that power is not available into the terminal. So that would have to be, you have to have additional transformers to carry that kind of power out to the pier.
And the last thing is I love the idea of the new Ford, and if you'll notice, that Ford happens to be sitting in downtown Denver. If you need somebody to go pick it up, I'd love to volunteer.
Hey, I was gonna go.
Seriously, there's a road trip.
Oh, there's three. There's three.
And they're all coming from Denver?
Sounds like we each get one.
I'm in.
Hey, that's all right.
Just back to the ferry, I think, we'd all like to hear that the ferry would use the power if we made the investment. Do they use this in other places? Make sure they have the technology to make use of it. But it does seem like a worthy goal for us to continue pursuing. You were on offsets and you're talking about eelgrass. What about anything else like shellfish harvesting? Are there any opportunities for us to consider aquaculture as part of a mitigation strategy?
We have been approached by a tenant for growing, I can't remember exactly which type it is, but a different type of seaweed. So that would be grown in tanks on shore. And then there are additional, so it does some sequestration just from growing the seaweed. And then it's my understanding that if you feed that seaweed to cows, they produce less methane. So there's a double whammy with that, because methane is quite a large producer of greenhouse gas inventories or greenhouse gases. So that's one that we've been approached by, and I'm sure there are a lot more that we could look at.
I've actually asked Paul to send me the data he's got on the reduction in methane from cows, and I have yet to see the actual science behind it, but I believe him now.
Would there be less gassy beef if we ate it then?
There's just so many jokes here, Bobby. I have to lay it off.
Well, I certainly appreciate that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if there's no more questions right now, I'll move on. We good? Okay.
Can you define GHG for me, Adrian?
Oh, sorry.
GHG.
GHG is
Greenhouse gas reduction.
So
I'm
the
confused.
regulatory environment for greenhouse gas reduction. So the purpose of this slide is really to show where the port sits. We are subject to regulations from all kinds of directions. And this just shows 4 of the main ones that we're directly in. There's others. I mean, of course, we're influenced by all kinds of things, but I just wanted to show you these particular jurisdictions have these particular goals which affect us, and we may participate in as stakeholders as well. So the federal level, the current goals are to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions for all of us by 50 to 52% below the 2005 levels by 2030, and have no emissions by 2050. So net zero, no emissions. We're down to 0. At the state, and part of this slide is to show you that it's confusing. So if you're confused, you should be. I've met my goal. So at the state level, the current targets are 40% below 1990 levels by 2030, and then skipping to 95% below 1990 levels by 2050. And the ultimate goal here for everybody is to have no emissions by 2050, right? That's our goal. Okay, the county level. So the county and the city split things out where they have goals for government operations and goals for the community. So everybody. So we're all included in the community goals. So I'm going to focus on that for this presentation. So Whatcom County, they're looking at a 45% reduction from 1990 levels. So they're also using 1990 like the state does as their baseline year by 2030. And they're looking at a 95% reduction by 2050. So ultimately, no emissions by 2050. City of Bellingham, they have a 40% reduction from 2000 as their baseline year by 2030, and an 85% reduction by 2050. So the port, like I mentioned, is affected by all of these. We don't have any regulatory control where we can tell our organizations or other folks that they need to reduce their footprint to help us meet our goals. But it is, we will be affected by some of these, like, for example, the city of Bellingham requirements for building electrification. So we're keeping an eye on that, for example. Any questions? No? Okay, we'll move on. So this is my last slide. So our next steps are to continue the development of the climate action strategy. We would be updating you more regularly, hopefully at least twice by the end of this year, and ask for your feedback on those details that we're bringing to you. Part of that will be establishing the port vision, so expanding on what we talked about with the directors and recommending one of those for you. We'd also like to set carbon reduction goals of our own and also allow for stakeholder input in that as well. We have had folks reach out to us, and we should be including them in that. We would like to complete the climate action strategy for adoption by resolution. And also, next steps include our port-wide resiliency planning, including a focus on sea level rise with the vulnerability assessment that is happening now. So that's all the slides I have, and I'd like to open it up again for more questions if you have any or comments.
Commissioner Shepherd?
Adrian, when do you think that, what's the timeline for doing that completion and adoption?
Hopefully by the end of this year.
This calendar year?
Yeah.
Good. All right. I think that was my only question. I just appreciate what Brian said in the beginning about the purpose of this and why we're doing it. I think it helps us to keep climate in our toolkit as we make decisions. And it's going to help us to weigh out how we spend our money and how we identify when a project pencils or when it doesn't. And I think this lens will help us get there. And I think we're also going to continue to see that the addressing climate change means jobs and it means economic development. We're going to see more things like having solar panel manufacturers and having solar panel installers and having EV bus manufacturers come to our community and bring new investment and jobs. I think this is a massive challenge to address, and massive challenges take a lot of money. And so we're going to be seeing all levels of government be addressing this. And that just means that there's going to be lots of opportunities for investment by our existing employers and new ones. So I like that we're thinking about being ready for this and hopefully being ready to take bold actions too. But I really appreciate the work you've done on this, Adrian, and the rest of your team. And I appreciate this thorough update.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Adrian, I appreciate the update. A lot of challenges lie within this update. I think, as usual, the report will be up for them. I just would like governments all around to remember the collateral damage when we start making decisions on doing things that who's going to hold it up monetarily. These days, some folks kind of think money grows on trees in Washington, D.C., and that's where the grants come from, but it all comes from the taxpayer across this country. So this is going to be a lot of expensive projects ahead, and I hope we can pick and choose some proper ones and with the least amount of monetary damage to the people in our county and with the most benefit. Thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks, Adrian, Brian, staff, and thank you, commissioners. Look forward to the debate where the rubber meets the road is at the budget meeting. So look forward to that. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the second presentation. By the way, I want to interject here. We will have another public comment session at 5:30 today. So for anyone wishing to comment on any of the items that they hear or any items that they didn't hear that they want to hear, 5:30 will be the time that we do that. Move on to American Marine Highway Project with Chris Clark.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Chris Clark, Business Development Manager at the Bellingham Shipping Terminal. I've got a screen to share with you. Here we go. So does that show up now? M5 Coastal Connector?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Okay, good. Well, this is a very brief presentation. I'm pleased to inform that the Federal Maritime Commission of the U.S. Department of Transportation has designated Bellingham as a Marine Highway Route M5 project, which means that we can start to plan a service to transport goods on barges between Bellingham and San Diego with an interim stop in Southern Oregon. And this will basically increase what they call alternative modal operations, which means that it gives people an alternative to trucks. So it will reduce truck traffic along I-5, and we expect reduced shipping costs as well. And the customer base we're targeting is basically building materials that that are produced in this county and other nearby counties, forest products, lumber, siding, that sort of thing. That will be the southbound cargo base, and the northbound cargo base will be repositioning empty containers and also refrigerated cargo equipment from San Diego back to Bellingham. So second slide here gives the salient points. The target for commencement is the first quarter of the coming year. And ourselves and the Port of San Diego will meet with potential barge operators next month And the plan is to initially use the BSD stub pier and our new crane, which subject to Commissioner's approval of budget repair, should be up and running in early 2020. And then if we succeed in getting another merit grant, the former rail span dock will be rehabilitated and used for this anticipated service. These pictures are courtesy of our friends at the Port of Richmond, but it basically shows what we would do. And in Richmond, they do have a similar crane, an LHM 420. You can see it there on the left. And they also have a spreader bar, which we do as well. And they're loading containers into a barge there on the river. And this shows the barge headed south. That particular route goes from Richmond to Norfolk. It's a relatively short route, but it's the same idea. Our route would be the longest service in length on the continental US. And we expect that each barge will carry the equivalent of about 200 truckloads of cargoes, and that there'll be twice monthly calls at Bellingham. It's relatively slow. It takes about a week to get down there and unloaded, and a week to similar to return back here. So that's the project in a nutshell. I wanted to inform commissioners and the public of this because you'll be hearing more about it in the future. So that's it. Any questions at all?
Commissioner Briscoe? Okay, Commissioner Shepherd.
No question.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
I was on mute. 2 years ago when I ran for re-election, the people of Whatcom County were asking me what the Port of Bellingham could do to cut greenhouse gas emissions. This is the first thing that I've spoke to. And it makes me so happy to see this coming about, to get some of these trucks off of the road, reduce the gases, and put a barge port in Bellingham and for people to work. It's all good. Chris, you're doing a hell of a job. Keep going, and anything I can do to help, just make the call. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate that.
Mr. Shepherd, did you have something?
Yeah, my only comment was about shore power at the rail stub. Is that something that these would utilize as well, and is something useful for us to do planning around?
Well, per the previous discussion, actually under the upcoming infrastructure bill, there is a carve out specifically for electrification at ports. And we plan on making an application for that once the program is announced. So at this point, the answer is no, because the crane operates on diesel fuel. But with that new grant program coming up, we're certainly going to apply to electrify that crane and have it run on shore power. But I mean, the thing about tug and barge is that other than the crane, there's no power needed because the tug pulls the barge. And when it's here standing by it, the amount of power that the tug would be using is really nominal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Chris, I would add one thing. I would allude to one thing. We would need power for the refrigerated vans. They can either plug them in or they can run on propane or diesel. But the refrigerated container vans, if we had a lot set up for power to plug them in, we could shut the engines off.
Oh, good point, Commissioner. And actually, we would hope to get southbound and maybe set up what they call gen sets on the barge to power them when they're going southbound. And that's really going to be part of our marketing strategy to go to people like Lummi Fisheries, for example, and say, we have this service, you have reefer containers moving south, can we put this together?
Very good.
So, first of all, I'll echo Bobby's sentiment. This is amazing. And by the way, this is my wheelhouse, so Chris, stand back. First of all, does that spreader bar do a 40 as well as a 20?
Oh, sure. We don't mess around when we get equipment. Yeah, definitely.
And then the second thing is I view what you just discussed, gen sets for reefer containers, to be similar to a building pad for a building. Gen sets and moving them in, how do I say this? I guess it sort of depends on who you're looking to get business from and how sustainable it is. But having the asset available has been crucial to a lot of the loads that we ship. And we would go to ports where they didn't actually use the gen set, because most of those are also diesel, but they actually had, you know, back-to-back facilities provided for plug-in operations for reefers. It's amazing how much cargo goes up the highway in a refrigerated container. Everything from dairy and food commodities to just things that need to be kept cold. So I see a tremendous need to maybe look for some of that funding to put a segregated yard aside for refrigerated containers. I'm not sure if you agree with that, and that may just be my personal experience, but relying on temporary power with gen sets is pretty inefficient if we've got an alternative to do something different.
No, I agree, Commissioner, and I mean, getting this designation from MARAD and talking to those people there, they know who we are now, and funding under the Marine Highway Program for equipment is done via grant programs that they have twice a year. And the positive thing about those programs is the rate of success is 60% of applicants that apply get funds. So we certainly will be after them for that.
Yeah, and it's also cheaper in the long run, even though we only had reefers there for a short period of time. It was so much less expensive to do it that way than to drag in gen sets to do it. But anyway, I'm getting into the weeds where I shouldn't be. But I love this because this is my kind of work, and I just love to see this happening, Chris, and I can't be any more pleased that this is coming our way. Thank you.
Oh, we appreciate your insights, Commissioner, and we'll keep you posted on our further progress.
No, I just want to go run the crane if you'll let me.
Well, you have to talk to Joe Schmidt about that first, you see.
I don't know, Joe scares me.
You
All right,
gonna drive up in that new electric Ford truck and get out and run the crane? Is that the plan?
Yeah, by the way, if you start shipping those trucks in on these containers, I won't get to go to Denver. Come on. All right, any other commissioner comments? Okay, let's go to a Sea Feast update. Mr. Fix?
Yeah, this will be a really quick one, Commissioners. The Sea Feast Board has voted to move the date of Sea Feast from September 18th to October 30th. So October 30th is a Saturday. The primary reason being a COVID outbreak in the county. We're hoping that the numbers will be a little bit further under control, but we can expect some sort of Sea Feast to happen on October 30th. It won't be like Sea Feast of the past. It won't be a full-blown stage and crowded venue type of a festival. It'll be a much more pandemic Sea Feast. So we'll try and keep people distance and activities that can be done safely. So more to come. There's a great team working on it. As you know, Sea Feast doesn't have an executive director right now. The port employees and Working Waterfront Coalition and many other volunteers will be putting Sea Feast on. So big thanks to Stephanie Wiley and Carrie Jones from the port who are going to represent us there. But any questions about Sea Feast?
This is going to be a Halloween Sea Feast?
It could be a costume Sea Feast. Yeah, you could dress up as your favorite fisherman. I was going to go as Bobby Briscoe.
Look out for all the tomatoes they're going to throw at you.
All right, any questions from the commission? Okay, I'm going to move to action items. First up on the plate is one of the most exciting developments for this port and this community in decades. And I'm going to ask Sunil Harmon to give us a update. Carrie, would you read the motion first?
Sure. Request commission authorization for the executive director to execute a lease agreement and construction of tenant improvements with Southwest Airlines funded in CIP GL 101-985. Oh, you can come
Mr.
here.
Harmon?
Good afternoon, Commissioner Sunil Harman, Director of Aviation. And I think you characterized it the way we feel. It's a very exciting development for staff and the port. And that's why I think it was important that I come down here personally, because it isn't often that we see these sorts of agreements. And what's before you is a twofold agreement. One is the approval of a lease for about 2,700 square feet, 2,730 square feet to be exact, in an exclusive use premises lease to house 31 employees above and below wing by Southwest Airlines. And then the cost that they will incur in developing that facility vis-a-vis our participation in the build out of portions that we think would not otherwise be leasable. So we're not subsidizing the airline with this agreement. We've been very cautious in our negotiations, and in some instances I've pushed back very hard that the port is not going to stand for any sort of suggestion that we are bolstering this airline over any other airline. And that's important because we can't discriminate among the carriers that we serve. But I think on behalf of our executive, Rob Fix, the airports team, definitely the facilities and engineering group led ably by Greg Nickel, Elliott Smith's group in real estate. This was a team effort to get us here. It was only 6 months ago that Southwest Airlines announced that they intended to serve Bellingham. And you used an expression where the rubber hits the road. This is where the rubber hits the runway. This is the deal that makes it real for me. A lease in hand is what now gives me the certainty until November 7th when they start operating. So it gives us about 54 days to get ready for the airline. And the bulk of that work is going to be done by the airlines as general contractors. They're taking on about, without bids in hand, I'm estimating $400,000 in work and another $300,000 in fixtures, furniture, and equipment. So they're all in at about $700,000. Our portion of the work is two areas. One is the above wing break room, which is directly across the ticket lobby. And the other is the conference and training facility on the second floor, as well as some purchases of lockers and baggage storage containers for an estimated $270,000. So in terms of total investment by the port in drawing this airline, with their guaranteed 3 flights a day, and being very conservative in my estimates because load factors aren't what they were before the pandemic. We don't know when border and other travel restrictions will be unfettered. And because of that, I'm estimating that we will have given the airline a risk abatement of about $2.9 million over 2 years. The incentive program is over the course of 2 years. The airline will generate for us in non-aeronautical revenues, which are primarily parking fees, concession revenues through rental car companies, concession revenues through food and beverage, and passenger facility charges, a little more than $4 million. So we will net about $1.1 million in the course of the 2-year incentive. So it is definitely a low-risk, high-reward investment for the port. We don't have a losing scenario here, because should the airline not be able to maintain its committed 2 daily flights a day, they're starting at 3, we can always then withdraw our incentive, and they would have to make us whole. That's how the incentive program is written. So there's really no risk. And then when you look at the extent of build-out that the airline is doing, this is going to be a game changer for Bellingham. You don't build up 2,700 square feet for 30 plus employees to support 3 flights a day. They're not ready to announce the ultimate network that will operate from this airport, but I would suspect that it will be in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 flights a day, should we not have additional impacts from the virus. So within the year, we should be seeing at least 8, possibly 10 daily frequencies based on the build out and staffing. Now that's, I'm being a little more optimistic than I usually am, but I'm looking at how the Southwest airline team has developed other stations over the last year in the course of the pandemic. We will be the 38th station that they're setting up in the last 17 years, so 17 months since the announcement of the shutdowns and so on in the course of the pandemic. This is an airline that's never declared bankruptcy. It's celebrated 50 years in service, has always been profitable, has a great corporate culture, which very well dovetails with the port's corporate culture. It's about being extremely customer-oriented and being fair in their dealings and negotiations. And I have to say, in the course of these negotiations, they have conducted themselves very well, as we have, always professionally. And this has been a tough, very tough negotiation. So pending the approval of this agreement, we begin the construction phase, which is we expect bids to be in by next Monday, and that gives us about 51 days to complete the build-out before the first flight on November 7th. And with that, I would ask you to approve this lease agreement. I think this will probably be a milestone decision that you will make as a commission. Looking back, this will be a major shift in what Bellingham and Whatcom County look like going out into the future. Thank you.
Mr. Shepherd, do you have a question or comment?
Well, I think it shows the importance of that incentive program that we put in place. I think that was 3.5 years ago or so we did that, and it continues to serve us well. So I know there's a lot of excitement over this, and I share that as well. Make sure we're there on hand to welcome those first guests into the terminal. I'm looking forward to that. Tell me a little bit about staffing. I know the airport's been running a very lean operation. You guys have been very cost sensitive and worked really hard to keep your costs down, including staffing. How are we going to be needing to think about staffing increases, whether that's in our airport firefighters or elsewhere throughout your divisions, to meet this increase in demand and use of our facility?
Commissioner Shepherd, so our low-cost posture is what attracts airlines like Southwest to us. We don't intend to change that. We intend to remain an extremely low-cost airport and constantly vigilant on how we manage our operating expenses. Having said that, the airline has announced three daily of an aircraft type that doesn't affect our aircraft firefighting index. We are an Index B airport right now, but should they upgauge those aircraft or add frequencies to where we are at 5 a day daily, we've made contingencies in our budget to add another 4 aircraft rescue and firefighting positions, because we will then have to respond with 2 trucks as opposed to 1. We will have to have 2 drivers on standby half an hour prior to an arrival, and similarly half an hour after a departure to make sure that the aircraft doesn't return with an emergency. So we've made that provision. We will not move on that provision. It's going to be part of the budget in 2022 until we have some certainty with network planning at Southwest Airlines announcing an upgauge in aircraft. So they would have to go from a Boeing 737-700 with 143 seats to a Boeing 737-800 with about 186 seats. And they would actually have to bump up the frequency as well. Remember, it's not just Southwest that'll drive that. If Allegiant decides to add to frequency, or Alaska upgauges from the Q400, that same situation would get triggered. So we've made a contingency for that. I appreciate the question. We've thought it through.
Okay. Do you have any sense of how the pre-sale tickets have been for Southwest for November? I know things are a little bit dicey with this pandemic that won't go away, but how have pre-sale tickets been? Do you have an idea?
Well, the airline tells us that all of the low fares, you know how Southwest is. It's very, very vigilant about guarding its booking site. It doesn't allow Kayak and others to access. You have to go to Southwest to book. And then they have their Super Saver and the Saver. Well, the first 3 columns are all sold out. So that should tell you that, the low-end fares are already gone. I was looking at Oakland in the early part of December just because I have a new grandnephew in San Jose, and the fare was going to be $98 each way, which is still very reasonable, considering Oakland is a major hub. You can hub out of Oakland or Las Vegas and probably go to 104 destinations. So we're truly getting a network airline with reasonable fares year-round. Now, I would have liked to see the $49 fare, but those are the ones that go first. And so bookings have been pretty good, all things considered.
All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yeah. Neil, I'd like to thank yourself and all the port staff that were involved in these negotiations and bringing this to fruition. It's a big, big thing for Bellingham. I don't think people realize the long-term good effects this is going to have on our county. But, thank you very much for all the hard work you and staff put into this.
Thank you, Commissioner Briscoe. The hard work actually begins on Monday. And I think Greg Nickel is really sweating how we're going to get out and get all that work done. But I'm confident that our team and our contractors will have all the necessary work done for the first flight on the 7th of November.
Well, so Neil, the first thing you do is you step out front and you roll up your sleeves and say, this is how we're going to do it.
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm going to jump in with 2 things. First, $1 million in remodel and 31 employees sends a very significant message that they're here to stay, that they're going to put a significant amount of money into this, and they intend to recoup it. So this just portends to me that they're here for a bigger purpose than just 2 to 3 flights a day. And you can just see that writing on the wall. But more importantly, 31 employees are coming to Bellingham to work for Southwest Airlines that weren't here before. I mean, that's a big deal. And I just can't, I can't imagine anything bigger in my tenure as a port commissioner that would be more important than that. And I'm just so proud that this happened on our watch. So thank you very much. And I guess the last thing is, when's the governor going to open the border? Governor Inslee, it is time. We need the help. And anyone else out there listening to this, please send the message. It's time to open the border. I can actually get people into Canada, but we can't get people down here. So that's it. Thank you. This has been a monumental achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
So we're ready to vote. You're going to have to step down so Carrie can read. Carrie, would you mind reading the motion?
You bet. Request commission authorization for the executive director to execute a lease agreement and construction of tenant improvements with Southwest Airlines, funded in CIP GL 101-985.
Commissioner Briscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd?
Also a yes.
And I am a proud and happy yes. We're going to give birth to this baby. All right, we'll move on to the next action item. Carrie, would you read that?
Yep. A motion to authorize executive director to execute an option to purchase property between Mercy Housing Northwest, Millworks LLC, and the Port of Bellingham for approximately 3 acres in the Waterfront District.
And I believe, Brian, you are going to take this on, Mr. Gorn.
Yep, thank you, Kerry. Good afternoon, commissioners. I've just got a single slide here to share with you. Just shows the location here. So I want to make sure that everybody can see that okay. It's just to be a site map that has kind of a blue shape in the middle there. It shows Laurel Street and Cornwall. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm really excited to present this action item as well. This is a project that the commissioners are all familiar with. We've been working with our project partners on this for a couple of years now. It's a project that is a community-focused project in the Waterfront District with a local partners, and actually has the opportunity of bringing the first affordable housing project to the Waterfront District, which is exciting. So I wasn't planning on going into a significant amount of detail in the project itself. I'm going to talk about the action item that's before you for consideration for the most part. Then we have 2 of our project partners that I'll pass it on to say a few words about their organization and how it fits into the community and this project in particular. So this is the area called the Lignin parcel, which is located in the former GP Mill property in the downtown Waterfront. It's located at the corner of Cornwall Avenue and Laurel Street. It's about 3.3 acres. And before going into any more detail, on behalf of the whole project team, we agreed it would be appropriate to acknowledge that this project, as well as all the projects in our community, are located on the traditional ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people, including the Lummi Nation and Nooksack tribe. And we'd like to honor their ancestors and acknowledge the past, present, and future of their people as the original inhabitants of this land. And we look forward to working with them directly on this project, as well as future projects as well. So with that being said, this is an option to purchase this property, about 3 acres, from between the port and the Millworks group, which is actually an entity comprised of 2 different groups, the Millworks LLC, which is related to the Whatcom Community Foundation, and Mercy Housing Northwest. So those 2 groups make up the Millworks group itself. So this is like I mentioned, it's a project that focuses on affordable housing, as well as a community-focused food campus, which includes things like a commercial kitchen, incubator space for food-related development of food trucks, that sort of thing, and a variety of different agricultural processing and distribution and other things related to local food sourcing. The option is something that we have been working through. The port is agreeing to sell this property to the Millworks group, or a combination of Mercy or the Millworks, depending on how the ownership structure of that group goes, and some timing considerations. It has a term extending through the December 31st, 2022, with an option to extend that to December 31st, 2023, pending satisfactory progress on ongoing fundraising and planning and that sort of thing. The option establishes an adjusted property value of $2 million, which also then takes into account the requirement for future restrictive covenants for requiring that affordable housing will be on this property. This is covenants that will run with the land, that will require that affordable housing are part of the property for the next 30 years, as well as a yet to be developed community benefit agreement and covenant that will describe how the food campus will function within our community, different components that they're committing to, and all of those covenants will be in place prior to any actual property transaction. So this is just the option that allows Mercy Housing specifically, as well as the Millworks LLC, to have site control, which allows them to start pursuing their outside funding mechanisms there's state grants and other things that are available that requires that they can demonstrate that they have site control. By entering into this agreement, we're providing that. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this over in a moment here, but from a staff perspective, this is something we've been working on for quite a while, and we'll provide more updates as we get more detail. But staff enthusiastically recommends approval of this one. And with that, I'll turn it over to Maury Ingram from Millworks and the Whatcom Community Foundation, and she'll pass that on to Joe Thompson from Mercy Housing Northwest. And then collectively, we'll be available to address any questions that you might have.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Good afternoon, commissioners. As Brian said, my name is Maury Ingram, and I'm the CEO at the Whatcom Community Foundation and also the manager of the Millworks LLC. And while the Millworks LLC is a relatively new entity, the Community Foundation has been working here for more than 25 years toward a vision that everyone who lives here in Whatcom County thrives. As you recall from the original project presentation back in the spring of 2019, the Millworks concept is really designed to integrate economic and community development in ways that create more opportunities for more people while helping address several of the most pressing challenges that we face as a community today, specifically affordable and workforce housing, childcare, and local food system infrastructure, among others. The pandemic obviously highlighted both the scale and the urgency of all of those issues, including the intersections among them. The unique partnership model that we're working toward with Millworks is really driven by purpose, as you can all appreciate, toward generating really truly meaningful and long-range ongoing benefits for the community. And Brian referenced the community benefit covenants and the community benefit agreement that we'll be working with other partner organizations on in the coming months. And while you've got a map of the site in front of you, what we really all need in our mind's eye is the image of the site enlivened by new families coming and going from their new homes, folks going to work in newly created jobs that are contributing to local food production, and children playing and learning in ways that help to set them up for success both in school and beyond. And also, very importantly, a place where everybody in the community feels a true sense of belonging, like this is really a place for them. So that image is one of economic vitality. It's also one of a healthy downtown neighborhood, and it will be the ultimate measure of success of the project. The Port has been a tremendous champion of this project, bringing both staff and other resources to bear. I really can't say enough about the contributions, the ongoing contributions that Brian Gurin and Gina Stark make to the project team. I think they have a really invaluable ability to see the alignment between the Port's mission, the community's needs, and the potential of the purpose and vision and mission of the Millworks project. So we're incredibly grateful for all of their thought partnership, their creativity around helping us identify other potential funding sources. And we're really thrilled to be at this juncture with the option. It's going to be a game changer moving the project forward. So thank you both to the commission and to the staff for that continued support. And then finally, as you know, strong partners are essential, and we couldn't have a better partner on the affordable and workforce housing front than Mercy Housing. They are highly regarded for their dedication to supporting families in achieving their own goals, and equally importantly, in building housing that residents are really truly proud to call home. So we're grateful for Mercy's shared vision for the project and what's possible through Millworks. And with that, I want to turn it over to the CEO from Mercy Housing Northwest, Joe Thompson.
Thank you, Maury. Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. Thank you as well, Brian, for that introduction. So good afternoon. My name is Joe Thompson, and I am the president of Mercy Housing Northwest. And on behalf of the entire Mercy Housing team, I'd like to thank each of you for making affordable housing a priority in your vision for the redevelopment of the Port and downtown Waterfront. I cannot tell you how much I truly, truly appreciate it. So a little bit about Mercy Housing Northwest. So Mercy Housing Northwest is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that develops and owns affordable housing. Every day we serve over 6,700 residents in 55 residential communities in the Northwest. We're a long-term owner, and we operate our own property management and on-site services. And what that means is that once we develop housing, we stay involved for the long term through the operations of that housing. Mercy Housing Northwest has over 25 years of experience developing and operating affordable housing. Our extensive experience in acquisition, design, construction, lease-up, and operations will be key to the success of the Millworks project. So this 86-unit family project will be our 5th development in Bellingham and our 8th in Whatcom County. And we are grateful for another opportunity to serve your wonderful community. In addition to the housing, it will also feature a very large early learning center on the ground floor. So at Mercy Housing, we believe that a stable, affordable home is one of the things that creates healthy families and allows children to thrive. A core part of that Mercy Housing Northwest approach that I think makes us different from so many other affordable housing providers is what we call our resident services, which are programs that are focused on helping residents achieve success in a variety of aspects of their lives, such as education for the kids, health and wellness for seniors, and financial stability for the families. The mission of Mercy Housing is to build so much more than housing. We build resilient, resident-centered communities that help families thrive and really dream big. Our achieving this mission would not be possible without your partnership and the commitment from the staff, and I cannot thank you enough for that. So thank you so much.
Brian, do you have additional comments?
Thank you, Commissioner. Sorry, no, I was trying to unmute there. That was wonderful. Thank you, Maury and Joe. Nothing additional from us. Like I said, staff recommends approval, and we're all here to address any questions you might have.
Commissioner Shepard?
Yeah, thank you both. Joe, first question, have you guys done a project like this in collaboration with a job creation element before? It sounds like you guys have done early childhood collaborations and healthcare and wellness. Have you done something like what is being proposed with the food campus in any other locations?
So the food campus is really a unique and exciting element of this project. And so we haven't done anything exactly like that, but really we have a pretty strong track record of partnership and really those collaborative projects that seek to use affordable housing as a platform for solving some really complicated and often interrelated challenges like food insecurity and housing insecurity as an example. And so we have several of our properties have early learning centers. Some of our properties have integrated healthcare clinics in them, and other kinds of either commercial tenants or kind of high social impact tenants. So this is a little bit of a wrinkle, but I would say it's a variation on a theme that we're very familiar with.
Okay, thanks. Maury, we heard a lot about the housing, and the housing is an exciting piece of this project. Can you update us on the food campus part of the proposal and how we understand that one moving forward into its next steps? And you're muted.
I'll get the hang of this just as we come out of the pandemic. As you all know, we've got a significant amount of local food infrastructure in the community, and certainly a lot of assets. We've got a thriving, really quite a wide range of farming activity that happens. We've got a number of value-added producers that are already doing incredible things here. And at the same time, we know that there are some infrastructure pieces that will really add benefit and really help to the way we describe it as sort of galvanize the local food system, and also complement other investments that have happened, like those in Linden around the Ag Education Center and others. And there are a lot of components. I don't want to walk you through the minutia of all of them unless that's helpful, but really the idea here is to create a place where we can move the local food hub activity so that farmers and others can bring in what they're either growing or ready to produce, or excuse me, ready to process into one facility. Things go out from there. There's actually benefit to the local farmers market simply for that reason as well, because it will give people a place where there is dry storage, where there is cold storage, and they can move things right over to the farmers market. And certainly if the Wednesday market continues on site, that will be just a mere push of the cart over to that site as well. We're talking with a variety of organizations, and we don't have letters of intent to announce today, but talking with education partners, talking with a number of institutional food providers who have to do meals and snacks as a part of other program work, incubator space for small businesses. So there's really a wide range, as well as, again, some of those infrastructure pieces around storage and processing. And we'll have some central kitchen facilities that will be used for both nonprofit and some for-profit activities as well. Hope that's helpful.
It is, and I think that's the part we're going to be looking for a lot more specificity and clarity on in the coming months, and just to make sure that we fully understand all the components and how these two dovetail together and are synergistic together, because I think there is that potential for those two projects to really serve each other well. You got jobs and a place for people to live, and all in the same location. It's a unique kind of connectivity that we could provide here, but I think our staff and commission are going to want to make sure we fully understand all those details as we're moving forward. And I think that's what this next phase allows us to achieve.
Absolutely. And I would just add that one of the really exciting things about the option being in place, once that's approved, is that it will give us the opportunity to then go to back to all of our partners with a bit more certainty and be able to fill in a lot of the blanks that we have at the moment.
Okay. And, my last comment is just on timeline. People always want things to happen rapidly, and I'm an impatient person, and I do too. We've been talking about this for several years, and there is a right amount of criticism of how come we're still talking about it and not doing something. I do want to reference the planning grant that we are just winding down from the state, which gave us some of this capacity to do this planning work, to understand the site, to understand the opportunities, the limitations, to understand the cleanup needs and all the different roles at play. It's a government timeline of process. It doesn't happen overnight, but I do think that we are in line with where that funding came from the state to position us to make use of the site and be able to move forward to these next steps. So we're looking for action and excited to see things happening. And I appreciate that those resources that we've been able to bring to support that work. All right, that's it for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Briscoe?
I think Commissioner Shepard pretty much covered everything I had to say. Thank you, Michael. I'd just like to see things get done. We've been talking about this, I think, since March of 2018. I'd like to get the wheels off the ground and get it flying here. And I'd certainly like to know more details on the food side of things, because that's been pretty vague. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm going to echo what Bobby said as well. First of all, let me just say this could not be a better location for Mercy Housing and what we need for low-income housing. So first of all, I want to welcome you to the mix. You have been an incredible partner to Bellingham. I've been a personal witness to what you've done in Barkley. My wife has a small retail place over there, and I've seen what you've developed over there and the programs you've put in place. So we look forward to partnering with you in the future, and we could not have chosen, or Maury, you could not have chosen a better group to partner with for bringing what this city needs. So that being said, just know that we need this desperately. Housing is one of the biggest barriers we have to economic development. And so we can't get this started fast enough. I can actually see people walking down to the shipping terminal to go to work, see them going into the Waypoint area when jobs are created there, see them going into the downtown core with very little difficulty. So this workforce housing will be a tremendous asset. And that being said, I think I'm just going to echo what the others have said, Maury. We'd love to help you figure out how to get that thing off the ground. You know, we've been supporters from day one, all of us commissioners, and if we can figure out how to get the cash flow into that facility for you to get the financing you need, that really is going to be key. I will say that we have been under a tremendous amount of pressure as a commission for not putting timelines on developments and developer operations. I don't need to mention any names, hardcore, but those types of developments have been a tremendous problem because we have not set those. So I'm comfortable with where we are for the December 22 timeframe, just to put a timeframe on it. But again, we don't want to see another parcel go under an agreement and then just sit there for an extended period of time. I'm very confident that Mercy will have the housing component in place very quickly. So the next step of this, I think, Maury, is to figure out how we can help you to get your portion in place and how we can get a sustainable balance sheet and cash flow and P&L statement put together that the banks will, or the community foundations will help with. And any kind of enlightenment you can give us along the way would be beneficial. That was kind of a question and statement more.
Well, we'll absolutely keep you posted. Ken, as you know, there's lots of moving parts to this, multiple partners, multiple financing sources, and we're going to start out with the philanthropic side because the more we can attract on that front, then the smaller the nut that we're cracking through a mix of investment and borrowing. So those are the kinds of questions that we're looking at. We have a pro forma, and there's just lots of variables based on who goes into what space with how many square feet, et cetera. And so I assure you there's a robust model in place. And now that we've got the option on the table, we'll be able to go back to those partners, firm up agreements, and sharpen the pencil to get some more detail.
Well, I heard you loud and clear when you said, that putting this in place is going to be a substantial asset and will signify a commitment from not only us, but everybody else that this is a serious project ready to move forward. So you've got my commitment to vote for it. So with that, let's go forward for a vote. If anybody else has got any questions, please bring them forward now. Okay, Carrie?
I have none.
A motion to authorize the executive director to execute an option to purchase property between Mercy Housing Northwest, Millworks LLC, and the Port of Bellingham for approximately 3 acres in the Waterfront District.
Commissioner Shepard?
An enthusiastic yes.
Commissioner Briscoe?
An impatient yes.
I'm just going to be a yes, not flamboyant. All right. With that, we normally go to public comment here, but we have one last agenda item, and I'm going to ask Carrie to read it and then discuss a course of action with that before we go to the public comment. Anybody wishing to do public comment, just hang around for just a little bit longer. Thanks.
Okay. Commission approval for a renewal and modification of lease between the Port of Bellingham and One Ocean Sea Products, Inc. for lease premises at Blaine.
So, Commissioners, there's a couple of legal hairs in this soup that we'd like to get sorted out. At least I would before we move forward with this action item. I would like to table this until we can at least get a clearer picture and get a report from the interested parties on where this is headed and what those issues are. Like to hear your comments on that, but for the moment, I think it's a bit early to be discussing this and would love to put a delay on this if we can.
I make a motion, we table this item until the next meeting.
Commissioner Shepard, are you?
I'll provide a second for that.
All right, with that being said, this item, well, shall we vote? Commissioner Briscoe,
Yes.
Commissioner Shepard, Commissioner Bell. I don't think we need to vote on the table, but that's
We're
okay.
Voting to table, yes, I approve that.
Yes, okay. And so item 3 will be tabled until the next meeting or the one after that, so we can get an adequate report for that. Okay, with that, that concludes our regular business. I'm going to open the floor now to anybody else who has any public comment. If you do, raise your hand or put your face up on the screen and make yourself known. Anyone? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move to other business. Commissioner Briscoe?
I have none.
Commissioner Shepard?
Is there an event at the pump track tomorrow?
Not that I know of. Have you heard of an event?
Oh, I thought there was an end of summer event coming up.
Yeah, that's sponsored by Colshin. We're sort of partnering with them and a couple other groups for beer garden, some performances by Yoga Man and the Circus Guild.
And is it tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yes.
Oh, okay, great. Well, the fun continues at the Waterfront District. So thanks for that. It's been, I don't know if we have a camera on that jump line, but I think it's as much fun to ride it as it is to sit and watch the people who have real talent, unlike myself, to perform jumps on that. If we don't have a camera, we should think about getting one, because it has really been fun to watch people with skill utilizing that new jump line.
Is that all your other business?
That's it for me.
Okay, and I have none.
That was a cue up for Rob to get the camera in, right?
Yeah.
We got vote on that? We take a vote on that?
I made a note. We'll get a camera in.
Just a editorial note. This has been an incredibly impactful meeting today. We established some workforce housing. We welcome Southwest Airlines with the beginning of their operations at the airport. Both of those are just really big deals. And I want to thank both my commissioners for supporting both those efforts. It's been a good day. Thank you, Rob, for the incredible staff that you have, because none of this would be possible without them. All right, meeting adjourned.
Commissioner Bell, I'll go one step further than what you said.
All right.
The people of Whatcom County are going to vote pretty soon on this commission. And I would like them to look at the track record of their present commission and of all the positive things we have done for the people of Whatcom County. It's been a very, very good commission, and I hope we can keep it together.
This message has been paid for by... All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
No,